The Battle of Thermopylae, one of the most famous battles in history. On this channel, we've covered many battles from ancient warfare, from Marathon to Gaugamela. However, few are as famous or as impactful as the battle fought at the narrow pass of Thermopylae between the Persians and the Spartans. But what actually happened there? And why is it so important? Well, today we're going to find out as we do some history in the making. In 480 BC, the Persian King Xerxes was preparing for war with the Greek city-states. He had assembled a massive army, which some sources say numbered over 100,000 soldiers, though recent scholarship puts it closer to 70,000. Either way, it was an absolutely massive force, comprised of troops from all over the known Persian world, from the Medes and the Cimmerians to the Egyptians and the Indians. With such a large army, Xerxes felt confident he could easily defeat the Greeks and their smaller force. But not all was well in the Persian Empire. While Xerxes was raising his massive army, the Spartans had been quietly assembling a force of their own. By the time they were ready to march north to meet the Persian invaders, the Spartans had raised around 7,000 elite soldiers, including 1,000 pairs of Spartan brothers. They were joined by other members of the Delian League, including 2,000 Thespians, 1,000 Thebans, and 400 Thagorians. Together, they formed the Hellenic army, numbering about 7,000 men, just a fraction of the Persian army. Despite being so vastly outnumbered, the Spartans refused to flee. Instead, they marched to meet the Persians at a place called Thermopylae, or the Hot Gates, where the narrow coastal pass funneled into a narrow valley. It was a perfect place to make a stand, and Spartan King Leonidas decided that's exactly what they would do. According to Herodotus, when Leonidas and his Spartan warriors arrived at Thermopylae, they immediately set to work building a wall across the pass, just long enough to keep the Persians from reaching the sea. The next day, Xerxes sent a herald to demand that the Spartans surrender and allow him to pass through. But Leonidas refused, answering the herald the same way he would answer Xerxes himself. "If you want to go through, come and get me." The Persians weren't expecting such defiance, so Xerxes gave the order to attack. Herodotus wrote that the Persians attacked in two massive columns, each over 100 soldiers wide. They charged down the narrow pass towards the Spartans, who awaited them behind their wall. The first Persian column reached the end of the Spartan wall and broke through. The Spartans didn't even break their ranks. They stood firm and smashed the Persians with their spears. The second column was more successful. Though they couldn't break through the center of the Spartan formation, they flanked the Theban left and pushed them back. But before either side could regroup, night fell and the fighting stopped. The next morning, the fighting started again. And once more, the Persians attacked in two columns. Again, the first column broke through the Spartans' wall, but they were met with such fierce resistance that they had to fall back. The second column fared no better. The Spartans held their ground and inflicted heavy casualties on the Persians until night fell once more. Once again, neither side took any prisoners, and every man who wasn't killed in the fighting died by his companion's sword. With two failed assaults behind him, Xerxes became impatient. He offered the Spartans one last chance to surrender, but Leonidas declined, replying, "Molon lave, come and get me." Enraged, Xerxes unleashed the full might of his army. He launched 10 separate assaults along the entire length of the pass. All the while, the Spartans held fast, beating back every Persian who dared approach them. However, soon after the fighting began, disaster struck. A traitor named Ephialtes revealed a mountain path that led to the rear of the Spartan position. Seeing their opportunity, the Persians broke and ran for the hills. Leonidas gathered his men and pursued them. But as they chased the Persians up the mountain, more traitors showed up. They told Xerxes that the Spartans had fled the battlefield. Thinking the war would be easy, Xerxes gave the order to pursue. When Leonidas realized that his men had been tricked, he turned back to fight. But it was too late. The Persians had reached the pass and were pouring through in massive numbers. Faced with certain death, Leonidas gathered 300 Spartan men, including all of his hoplites, and prepared to make a final stand. The rest of the Hellenic army broke and ran. Some historians suggest that this was because the Spartans expected them to do exactly that. Leonidas knew that if the Persians thought that the whole Hellenic army was trying to escape, they'd give chase and leave the pass unguarded. That way, the Spartans and their allies could slip away in the night. However, according to Herodotus, a Corinthian and a Theban refused to abandon Leonidas. The Corinthian was Eurytus, son of Cleisthenes, who had pleaded with Eurytus's father to let him stay and fight with the Spartans. When Cleisthenes heard of his son's heroism at Thermopylae, he erected a bronze statue in his honor. As for the Theban, he was named Loco, son of Menoetius. Loco was promised to be married to the daughter of King Theodectes, but he chose to stay with the Spartans instead. After Leonidas told the rest of the Hellenic army to retreat, Loco said to his comrades, "Let us make our stand here, and wait for the barbarians to come up. Then let those who wish to escape flee, but we will hold our ground like men." So Eurytus and Loco stood firm, refusing to flee with the others. Though the exact details of what happened next are debated, historians generally agree on the broad strokes. Leonidas and his 300 hoplites held off the entire Persian army for hours. During this time, the rest of the Hellenic army retreated safely away from Thermopylae. Eventually, the Persians broke through the Spartan lines and killed every man, including Leonidas, Eurytus, and Loco. It's worth noting that modern historians debate the accuracy of Herodotus's account of the battle. Many believe that his numbers are inflated and that the Persians never really outnumbered the Spartans 10-1. Also, the idea that Leonidas only had 300 soldiers with him is also likely an exaggeration. Even if there were only 300 Spartans present, however, the bravery shown by Leonidas and his men is still astounding. To hold off an entire army, even for a few moments, requires great courage. To hold them off for days is nothing short of miraculous. While the Spartans were eventually defeated, they achieved their goal. The Persian army had to stop and waste valuable time at Thermopylae. This gave the rest of the Greek city-states time to prepare for the coming invasion. Soon after Thermopylae, the Persians would face a humiliating defeat at the Battle of Salamis, where a much smaller Greek navy utterly crushed the mighty Persian fleet. In the end, the Persians never even made it to Athens, and the Greek way of life was preserved. So, what can we learn from the Battle of Thermopylae? For one, we see the incredible courage of the Spartans and their allies. To stand and fight against a massive invading army shows incredible bravery. Second, we see the importance of having a strong military. Without a strong military, the Greeks would have surely fallen to the Persians. Third, we see the importance of strategy. Leonidas knew that the best way to defeat the Persians was not to try and beat them in open battle, but to force them to waste time and resources. Finally, we see the importance of unity. The Greeks were able to defeat the Persians not because they were stronger or more numerous, but because they were united. The Persians may have boasted a force of 100,000 soldiers, but they were undone by 7,000 resolute Greeks. For more videos of mine on ancient warfare, check out my series Ancient Warfare Explained. And, as always, thanks for watching.